Welcome to day 6. We are underway in our Get Productive course, and I hope you are taking the action steps. Remember, each day there is a Get It Done task, and it's designed to take you, honestly, most of them under 10 to 15 minutes. Some may require you a little bit more time and effort, but each day is designed to build upon the next. And so this week we're talking all about getting the mindset. And you remember Module 1, we talked about get organized and wanted to get you some quick wins. And then Module 2 is all about getting the mindset. And what we're doing is we're taking some of the best minds out there in productivity and we're simplifying it down to a few essential productivity principles and laws that you can govern your life with. And so today I want to focus in on a book called Work the System. I'm going to be sharing this in a little bit more detail as we move on in the upcoming modules. But there is a principle and a law that's shared in Work the System that is incredibly important for you to get. And it's something that really has revolutionized my own way of looking at things. And the law is simply called the Occam's Law. And this is what it states. The simplest, and this is in my own words, but essentially this is the principle. The simplest solution is almost always the best solution. So when you are faced with a challenge, when you're faced with a problem, when you are just looking at your day in general about how to attack a certain project or a task, the best thing you can ask yourself is, what's the simplest solution here? And it really does follow that principle we've often heard called keep it simple, stupid. But it really does work, and in a minute I'll share with you a practical example. But here we have an illustration, and by no means am I saying that the ladies go about all this wrong and the men know how to go about this, but I don't want you to miss the principle here. So if you have a mission to go to Gap and buy a pair of jeans, most of the time the men will take an exact route. It'll take them 6 minutes, $33, and they're out the door. Now often for the ladies it's the experience, so they end up traveling through several different stores. They end up sometimes buying more than just jeans because after all, other things they come across were on sale. Obviously, I'm being tongue-in-cheek a little bit with this example, but how many times have you been, and I know I have, been guilty of living life this way? So our day starts off, and we end up just like the red line that you see on the screen. We end up doing almost everything else besides the mission that we had for that day. We have distractions that come along, or we open up our email inbox first thing in the morning and suddenly we're off on this rabbit trail and we're on this website. And maybe you could even use this chart as an example of how you operate online, where you get online because you want to pay a bill, and before you know it you're in your email inbox, you are over on this site, you're over on Facebook, an hour later you're on Twitter. You're starting to watch funny YouTube videos, and meanwhile you've forgotten in that process to pay the bill that was due in the upcoming day. So my challenge for you, and the law that I really want you to get, is this Occam's Law, which is when you're faced with a challenge this week or a problem or a situation, ask yourself, what's the simplest solution here? Because the simplest solution is almost always the best solution. Here's a personal example. This just happened to me last week. I also have a job search website that I've been running for a couple years now. And so I decided the month that we're recording this video that I was going to offer free resume critiques. You know, the market's tough. It's a challenge out there. And I just wanted to do a small part in providing as much expertise as possible to help people that are struggling out there. And so before I did, I wanted to add a contact form where people could easily get in touch with me that were interested in having me do a free resume critique for them. And so I started exploring some cool plugins out there, and one of them was a really neat system that is contactme.com. And I was amazed at kind of how all-encompassing it was. It allows you to like easily manage your task and create a calendar and have a contact list in there, and just it was pretty robust. And I'm not saying this isn't a bad system, and it could be practical and good for you. But in the middle of reviewing this and trying to figure out how to set it up and how to learn how the system and the software works before I launched this free resume critique, I decided to ask myself the question, what's the simplest solution here? And what I opted for was just a free plugin called Contact Form 7 that would send me an email in my Gmail, which I've already got a system for labels to help me keep organized. And so I decided to go that route. Well, when I put the word out, I was quickly inundated with about, I would say, over 30 free resume critiques in the matter of 24 hours. And each day from that, I've had an additional 5 or 10 that have requested for me to do a free resume critique. Now, luckily, I also had my simple productivity system in place that I'm going to share with you coming up that allowed me to do this efficiently and effectively as possible. I was actually able to do all the resume critiques literally with probably in under 2 hours, which is pretty phenomenal from what I was able to do in the past with doing a 3-page resume critique, individual for each person. But back to my point, if I had not asked myself the question, what's the simplest solution here, what would have probably have happened in my case is I would have just made my situation more complex. I would have had 2 different places where I was trying to keep track of things, and I was essentially setting up for myself a second system that I would have to log into and keep track of, as opposed to keeping it all in one, which is what I'll be showing to you coming up in an upcoming module. But hopefully that example will help make sense to you, and you'll really get a hold of this law and begin to think differently when you're faced with problems and challenges. Remember, it's all about getting the mindset, and I want you to really ask yourself that question this week. What is the simplest solution here? Because the simplest solution is probably the best solution. We often think the more complex, the more robust, the more everything is included into a software package is the best. But really, it's often not. Get the mindset of thinking simple.